When tech mogul Marcus Alford discovered DNA test results proving his pregnant wife Nancy's triplets weren't biologically his, the public confrontation at an upscale restaurant should have been the end of their 7-year marriage, but it was actually just the beginning of their nightmare. As Nancy's hands trembled over her swollen belly and the DNA papers scattered across the marble floor, neither she nor Marcus realized they were pawns in a deadly game orchestrated by someone they trusted completely. What started as a story about infidelity and betrayal would become a race against time to save 3 innocent triplets, uncover the truth about Nancy's mysterious cancer diagnosis, and discover that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones capable of the greatest evil. My beautiful family and friends, welcome back. If you're ready for another unforgettable story, do me a quick favor, hit that like button. Why? Because every like tells YouTube, this story is worth sharing with more people who might really need it today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I do read every single one, and it makes me feel like we're sitting together in the same room, sharing these moments heart to heart. And don't forget to share this video with someone you love. You never know, the story you share might be the encouragement they've been praying for. This isn't just a channel, it's a family. And when you engage, you're helping us build a safe space where real stories bring real hope. Now, take a deep breath. Get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. The silence in Chez Laurent was deafening. Nancy Alford sat frozen in the plush velvet chair, her dark skin flushed with humiliation as every pair of eyes in the upscale restaurant bore into her. The DNA test results lay scattered across the marble floor like fallen leaves, each page a testament to secrets that had just exploded into the open. Her husband Marcus, estranged husband, stood over her, his chest heaving with rage. The man who had built a tech empire worth hundreds of millions, who commanded boardrooms with quiet authority, had just done the unthinkable. The red handprint on Nancy's cheek burned like fire, but not as much as the betrayal in her heart. 7 years, Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. 7 years of marriage, and you let me believe. Nancy's hand instinctively moved to her rounded belly, where 3 little lives grew, lives that the DNA test claimed weren't his. At 6 months pregnant with triplets, she felt more vulnerable than ever, yet something inside her refused to crumble completely. The maitre d' approached cautiously, his French accent thick with concern. Perhaps we should. Don't, Marcus cut him off, pulling out his phone. Everyone's already recording anyway. His laugh was bitter, hollow. Tomorrow's headline, Tech mogul discovers wife's affair, baby's not his. Nancy finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Marcus, please. Let me explain. Explain what? He gestured wildly at the papers. The lab confirmed it twice. 3 different potential fathers, Nancy. 3. His voice broke on the last word. How do I explain that to my board? To my family? To myself? Around them, the restaurant's elite clientele watched the drama unfold like a twisted dinner theater. Nancy recognized several faces, politicians, celebrities, business moguls, all witnessing her most private moment become public spectacle. A waiter nervously began collecting the scattered papers, but Marcus stopped him with a sharp gesture. Leave them. Let everyone see what kind of woman I married. Nancy's best friend Keisha suddenly appeared beside their table, having rushed from the ladies' room where she'd been taking a phone call when everything exploded. That's enough, she declared, stepping between them. Marcus, I don't care how hurt you are, you don't put your hands on a pregnant woman. Ever. My pregnant woman, Marcus spat. Except they're not even mine, are they, Nancy? The babies seemed to respond to the tension, rolling and kicking inside her womb. Nancy placed both hands on her belly, feeling their movement, and something shifted inside her. These children, regardless of their biological father, were innocent. They deserved better than this public humiliation. You want to know the truth? Nancy stood slowly, her voice gaining strength. The whole truth. Marcus's eyes flashed with something between hope and dread. I thought I already did. No, Nancy said, surprising herself with her calm tone. You know what a piece of paper says. But you don't know why I did what I did. You don't know about the nights you worked until 3 a.m., or the weekends you spent at the office while I sat alone in our mansion, wondering if my husband even remembered he had a wife. So you cheated. Multiple times, apparently. I made mistakes, Nancy admitted, her voice carrying across the silent restaurant. Terrible, horrible mistakes that I'll regret for the rest of my life. But those mistakes don't erase 7 years of loving you, Marcus. They don't erase the man I married, or the family I hoped we'd become. Marcus stared at her, his anger warring with something else, something that looked almost like longing. The irony is, Nancy continued, her hand never leaving her belly, I came here tonight to tell you something that would change everything. Something that makes this DNA test meaningless. What could possibly? I'm dying, Marcus. The words hung in the air like smoke. Around them, the restaurant held its collective breath. Marcus's face went white. What? Stage 3 cervical cancer, Nancy said quietly. Dr. Peterson confirmed it yesterday. The pregnancy has been hiding the symptoms, but... She shrugged, a tear finally escaping down her cheek. I have maybe 6 months. 8 if I'm lucky. What would you do if you discovered everything you believed about your marriage was a lie, but then learned the truth was even more complicated than you imagined? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes the real story is just beginning. The confession hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, his designer suit suddenly feeling too tight, the air in the restaurant too thin. Nancy, his Nancy, stood there with one hand protecting her unborn children and the other wiping away tears that carved tracks through her carefully applied makeup. Cancer. The word came out strangled, disbelieving. Nancy nodded, her composure finally cracking. I wanted to tell you properly. Not like this. Not with... She gestured helplessly at the DNA results still scattered on the floor. Keisha moved closer to Nancy, her protective instincts kicking in. At 32, Keisha Williams had been Nancy's anchor since their college days at Howard University. Where Nancy was gentle and accommodating, Keisha was fire and steel, a successful divorce attorney who'd seen enough broken marriages to know when one was worth saving. How long have you known? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The diagnosis? Since Monday. The symptoms? Nancy's hand traced circles on her belly. I thought it was just pregnancy complications. The bleeding, the pain. Dr. Peterson said the babies might have actually helped by forcing regular checkups. Without them, I might not have caught it until it was too late. Marcus ran his hands through his salt and pepper hair, a gesture Nancy had seen 1,000 times during their marriage when he was overwhelmed. At 45, Marcus Alford was still devastatingly handsome, the kind of man who commanded attention when he entered a room. His success with Alford Tech had made him one of Silicon Valley's most eligible bachelors before Nancy. After their marriage, he became one half of what the media dubbed a power couple to watch. But power, Nancy had learned, could be isolating. The affairs, Marcus said suddenly, his business mind already working through the timeline. When did they happen? Nancy closed her eyes, remembering. The first one was 18 months ago. Dr. James Hendricks. Your oncologist? Marcus's voice rose an octave. He wasn't my oncologist then. He was just James. A man I met at the charity gala for children's cancer research. You were supposed to be my date, remember? But you had that emergency board meeting. Marcus did remember. The Zentech acquisition had been falling apart, threatening to cost Alfred Tech billions. He'd left Nancy at the gala and worked through the night, successfully saving the deal but missing the moment his marriage began to crumble. He was kind, Nancy continued, her voice distant. He listened when I talked about wanting children, about feeling invisible in my own life. One conversation led to coffee, coffee led to lunch, and lunch led to... She trailed off, unable to finish. And the others? Keisha asked gently, though her lawyer instincts were clearly gathering information. Michael Torres, the personal trainer you hired for me. That was brief, maybe 3 weeks. I ended it when I realized I was just trying to fill a void. Nancy's voice grew stronger. And David Kim. Marcus jerked as if struck. David? My business partner David. Your former business partner, Nancy corrected. The one you forced out 6 months ago over creative differences. The pieces clicked together in Marcus's mind with sickening clarity. David Kim had been his closest friend since MIT, his co-founder at Alfred Tech, the best man at their wedding. Their falling out had been brutal and public, David claiming Marcus had become a control freak who'd lost sight of their original vision. That's why he kept pushing for those late-night strategy sessions, Marcus realized. Why he always volunteered to check on you when I was traveling. Nancy nodded miserably. It started as friendship. David would come by when you were in Tokyo or London, just to make sure I was okay. We'd talk for hours about art, about dreams we'd abandoned for success. He made me feel like the woman I used to be, not just Mrs. Marcus Alford. So you slept with my best friend. I fell in love with him, Nancy admitted, the words hitting Marcus harder than any slap could have. For about 2 months, I thought I was going to leave you. David wanted me to. He said you'd never change, never prioritize us over your empire. Marcus felt his world tilting on its axis. What stopped you? Nancy's smile was sad and knowing. You did. Do you remember the night I had food poisoning from that sushi place? Marcus frowned, searching his memory. Vaguely. I was in Seattle, I think. You were. But when Keisha called and told you I was in the ER, you chartered a private jet. Flew back in the middle of negotiations that had taken months to arrange. You sat by my hospital bed for 3 days, held my hair when I was sick, brought me ice chips and terrible hospital coffee. Nancy's voice softened. You missed $100 million deal to make sure I was okay. The memory came flooding back. Marcus had been terrified. Nancy had been so weak, so pale. The thought of losing her had made everything else seem meaningless. That's when I realized David was wrong, Nancy continued. You do love me. You just don't know how to show it anymore. Your success became a wall between us. But underneath, you're still the man who worked 3 jobs to pay for my mom's chemotherapy when we were dating. Marcus stared at his wife, this woman who'd betrayed him, lied to him, and somehow still saw the best in him. So you ended it with David. I ended it with all of them. That's when I started fertility treatments, hoping we could finally have the family we'd always talked about. Nancy's hand moved to her belly again. The irony is, I got pregnant naturally right after stopping the treatments. Multiple conception is actually a side effect of the cancer, something about hormone levels. Jesus, Nancy. Marcus sank into his chair, overwhelmed. Keisha had been watching this exchange with the sharp attention of someone who'd spent years mediating between broken hearts and wounded egos. You know, she said carefully, DNA doesn't make a family. Love does. Commitment does. The choice to show up every day does. Easy for you to say, Marcus shot back. These aren't your children that might not be yours. No, they're not, Keisha agreed. But they are 3 innocent babies who need parents. And Nancy is a woman who's facing the fight of her life while carrying them. Nancy placed a hand on Keisha's arm, silencing her. Marcus, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to stay. But I need you to know, those mistakes, those moments of weakness, they were mine, not theirs. She gestured to her belly. Whatever happens to me, they deserve a chance at the life we dreamed of giving our children. Marcus looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware that their private drama had become public entertainment. Several patrons were openly recording on their phones. Tomorrow, this would be trending on every social media platform. But for the first time since reading those DNA results, Marcus found himself thinking not about his reputation or his empire, but about Nancy's words. 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm lucky. Have you ever had to choose between pride and love? Between what's right and what's compassionate? Tell us in the comments. Sometimes the hardest decisions reveal who we really are. Marcus was about to respond when Nancy's phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with an incoming call. Dr. James Hendricks, Oncology. Nancy's face went pale. I should take this. He said he'd call if there were any changes to my test results. Take it here, Marcus said firmly. No more secrets. Nancy hesitated, then swiped to answer, putting the phone on speaker. Dr. Hendricks. Nancy, thank God you answered. Dr. Hendricks' voice was tight with urgency. Where are you right now? Are you somewhere safe? I'm at dinner with my husband. Why? Listen very carefully. I need you to get somewhere private and secure immediately. There's been a development with your case, a serious one. Marcus leaned forward. This is Marcus Alford, Nancy's husband. Whatever you need to tell her, you can say in front of me. There was a long pause. Mr. Alford. I was hoping I could speak with Nancy privately first, but given the circumstances. Another pause. Nancy, I've been reviewing your test results from Monday, and something doesn't add up. I ran additional tests on your original samples. Nancy's hand flew to her throat. What do you mean something doesn't add up? The cancer markers in your blood, they're inconsistent with the tissue samples. Dramatically inconsistent. It's almost as if. Dr. Hendricks took a shaky breath. Nancy, I don't think you have cancer at all. The restaurant seemed to tilt around them. Nancy gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. What? Someone has been manipulating your test results. The tissue samples sent to pathology were switched with samples from another patient, a patient with advanced cervical cancer. But your actual blood work, the tests I ran personally today, show no cancer markers at all. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Are you saying someone deliberately made Nancy think she was dying? That's exactly what I'm saying. And Mr. Alford, there's more. I received a call an hour ago from a Dr. Patricia Webb at Stanford Genetics Lab. Someone broke into their facility last night and tampered with several DNA analysis machines, specifically the ones that processed your samples. Nancy and Marcus stared at each other in shock. Around them, the restaurant patrons leaned in closer, sensing that the drama was escalating to something beyond a simple marital dispute. Dr. Hendricks, Marcus said carefully, are you suggesting that both Nancy's cancer diagnosis and the DNA test results were falsified? I'm not suggesting it, Mr. Alford. I'm stating it as fact. Someone has gone to extraordinary lengths to destroy your marriage and your family. The question is why. Keisha grabbed Nancy's other hand. Who would do this? Who has access to medical records and DNA labs? Before anyone could answer, Nancy's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced down and gasped, her face going white. Marcus read over her shoulder. You should have left when I told you to. Now everyone will pay the price. Check your stock prices. A friend. Marcus immediately pulled out his phone, navigating to his investment app. His face went ashen. Alfred Tech stock has dropped 40% in the last hour. How is that possible? Nancy asked. Someone leaked our drama to the financial press early. But it's more than that. Marcus's fingers flew across his screen. There are photos, videos from tonight. But also, Jesus Christ. What? Medical records. Someone leaked your fake cancer diagnosis to the media, along with the DNA results. The headlines are already running. Tech mogul's wife fakes cancer to hide multiple affairs, and Alfred Tech CEO's personal life in shambles as company stock plummets. Nancy felt the babies kick violently, responding to her stress. Who would have access to all of this? Who could orchestrate something so complex? Dr. Hendricks' voice crackled through the speaker. Nancy, I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you months ago when our relationship ended. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he remained silent. There was a reason I ended things between us so abruptly. Someone threatened me, told me that if I didn't break up with you immediately, they would destroy my career and make sure I lost my medical license. I thought it was your husband, so I didn't fight it. It wasn't me, Marcus said firmly. I know that now. Whoever called me knew details about our relationship that only you could have known, Nancy. Intimate details. They also knew about your fertility struggles, your family medical history, everything. Someone close to you has been watching, listening, planning this for months. Nancy's mind raced through the possibilities. David Kim knew all of those things. So did Michael Torres. I told him about our fertility issues during training sessions. Wait, Keisha interjected, her lawyer instincts sharp. Nancy, think about this timeline. When exactly did each of these relationships end? Nancy closed her eyes, remembering. Dr. Hendricks ended things abruptly in March, right after you told me that anonymous tip about him came to your office. Michael got weird and distant in April after someone called his gym and complained about inappropriate relationships with clients. And David? David what? Marcus pressed. David started acting paranoid in May. He said someone was following him, that his phone was being tapped. That's when he started pushing you so hard at work, Marcus. He was convinced someone was trying to sabotage the company from the inside. Marcus felt puzzle pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity. The creative differences that made me force David out, they weren't really about business strategy, were they? No, Nancy whispered. He was trying to warn you. He said someone was going to use me to destroy you, destroy the company. I thought he was being paranoid because he felt guilty about our affair. Dr. Hendrick's voice cut through their realizations. There's one more thing. The person who called to threaten me, they claimed to be calling on behalf of someone who loved Nancy too much to watch her destroy her life. They said they were trying to save your marriage. Nancy and Marcus looked at each other, the same terrible realization dawning on both their faces. Keisha, Nancy said slowly, you were the one who told me about the anonymous tip about Dr. Hendricks. You were the one who suggested I hire Michael as a trainer. You were the one who encouraged me to spend time with David when Marcus was traveling. Keisha's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Nancy, you're being paranoid. The stress is getting to you. And you're the only person who knew all the intimate details about my relationships, my medical history, my fertility struggles, Nancy continued, her voice getting stronger. You're the only person I trusted with everything. Marcus stared at Keisha, this woman he'd known for 7 years, who'd been his wife's maid of honor, who'd sat at their dinner table hundreds of times. Why? Keisha finally dropped her mask, her expression shifting from concern to something much darker. Because she deserved better than you, Marcus. Because you never appreciated what you had. Because I loved her first, and I loved her best. The confession hit the restaurant like a bomb. Nancy jerked away from Keisha as if burned. I've been watching you neglect her for years, Keisha continued, her voice gaining strength. Watching you choose your precious company over your wife again and again. So I decided to give Nancy what she really needed, the chance to see what real love looked like. Multiple chances, actually. You orchestrated the affairs, Marcus said, the full scope of the manipulation becoming clear. I facilitated opportunities for Nancy to find happiness. The fact that she found it with 3 different men just proved how starved for attention she was. Keisha's smile was cold. But she kept choosing you. Kept going back to her emotionally absent husband. So I had to force the issue. Nancy felt sick. The cancer diagnosis. You made me think I was dying. I made you realize what was important. Family. Love. The time we have left. Keisha's expression softened slightly when she looked at Nancy. I was going to reveal the truth after you left Marcus. We were going to disappear together, raise those babies together. I have money saved, connections in Europe. We could have had the life you always wanted. You're insane, Marcus breathed. I'm in love, Keisha corrected. And I'm tired of watching the woman I love settle for a man who treats her like a trophy wife. The restaurant erupted in chaos as patrons finally grasped that they were witnessing something far more sinister than a simple marital dispute. Some pulled out phones to call police, others pushed back from their tables, sensing danger. Nancy stood slowly, her hands protecting her belly. Keisha, I need you to listen very carefully. I love you, as a friend, as a sister. But what you've done, the manipulation, the lies. Her voice broke. You've destroyed everything. My marriage, Marcus's company, innocent people's careers. You've put my babies at risk with stress that could have killed us all. I did it for us, Keisha insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. Nancy, everything I did was for us. No, Nancy said firmly. You did it for you. And now we're all going to pay the price." As if summoned by her words, the restaurant doors burst open and police officers poured in, responding to multiple 911 calls about a domestic disturbance that had escalated beyond anyone's expectations. But the real shock was yet to come. When someone claims to hurt you out of love, is it still love? Or is it something much darker? Drop your thoughts below. This story is about to take an even more twisted turn. The lead detective, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Detective Rivera, surveyed the scene with practiced calm. DNA test results scattered across marble floors, a pregnant woman with a red handprint on her cheek, a man in an expensive suit looking shell-shocked, and another woman whose demeanor had shifted from concerned friend to something much more dangerous. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from Mrs. Alford," Detective Rivera said firmly, addressing Keisha. "She's my best friend," Keisha replied, but she didn't move away from Nancy. If anything, she stepped closer. "I'm not leaving her side." "Actually, you are." Dr. Hendrick's voice crackled through Nancy's phone speaker. "Detective Rivera, this is Dr. James Hendricks at Stanford Medical. I'm the one who called this in. The woman you're looking at has committed medical fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage, and potentially attempted murder." Keisha's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Attempted murder? That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Dr. Hendricks continued. "The stress you put Nancy under with a fake terminal diagnosis while she's carrying triplets could have triggered premature labor, stroke, or heart failure. You weaponized medicine, Ms. Williams." Detective Rivera motioned for her partner to position himself behind Keisha. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to place your hands where I can see them." "Wait," Nancy said suddenly, her lawyer's mind catching something. "Keisha, how did you get access to the medical systems? You're a divorce attorney, not a doctor." Keisha's smile turned predatory. "You really think I did this alone? Nancy, you always were too trusting." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Who else is involved?" "Someone who has just as much reason to want you destroyed as I do," Keisha said. "Someone who's been planning this revenge for months." The restaurant's main entrance opened again, and David Kim walked in, flanked by two men in dark suits. Nancy's heart lurched. David looked different. Harder. The gentle artist who'd once painted watercolors of sunsets had been replaced by someone cold and calculating. "Hello, Nancy." "Marcus." David's voice carried none of the warmth Nancy remembered. "I hope you've enjoyed tonight's entertainment." Marcus stood slowly. "David, I should have known." "Should you?" David's laugh was bitter. "You forced me out of the company I helped build, Marcus. You destroyed my reputation, my career, my life. All because I dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, you should spend more time with your wife. So you decided to sleep with her out of spite?" "I fell in love with her because she's everything you never deserved," David shot back. "But when she chose you over me, over her own happiness, I realized something had to be done." Detective Rivera tried to regain control. "Sir, I need you to identify yourself and state your business here." "David Kim, former CTO of Alfred Tech. And my business is watching Marcus Alford's empire burn." David pulled out his phone, showing them a live feed of financial markets. Alfred Tech stock is now down 60%. The board called an emergency meeting an hour ago. By morning, Marcus will be voted out as CEO. "How?" Marcus demanded. "Even with tonight's drama, the board doesn't have the votes to remove me." "They do now." One of David's companions stepped forward, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm Thomas Chin, forensic accountant. Mr. Kim hired me to conduct an audit of Alfred Tekka's finances. We discovered some very interesting discrepancies." Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath him. What discrepancies? Missing funds, falsified reports, payments to shell companies. Thomas's voice was clinical, detached. Evidence of embezzlement totaling approximately $50 million over the past 2 years. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "I've never—" "Of course you haven't," David interrupted. "But you see, Marcus, when you have access to company systems, which I still had even after you forced me out, and when you have a brilliant lawyer willing to help." He gestured to Keisha. "Amazing what kind of evidence can be created." Nancy stared at her former best friend and former lover in horror. "You framed him." "We gave him what he deserved," Keisha said unapologetically. "A taste of what it feels like to lose everything you care about." Detective Rivera had heard enough. "David Kim, Keisha Williams, you're both under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and corporate sabotage." She began reading them their rights, but David held up a hand. "Detective, you might want to wait on that. You see, we have insurance." "What kind of insurance?" Detective Rivera asked warily. David nodded to his second companion, a woman Nancy now recognized as Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Keisha's cousin who worked in medical records at Stanford Hospital. "Dr. Mitchell has been very helpful in our little project. But more importantly, she's been monitoring Nancy's real medical condition." Nancy felt ice in her veins. "What do you mean, my real medical condition?" Dr. Mitchell stepped forward, her expression apologetic but determined. "Nancy, I'm sorry. But those blood tests Dr. Hendricks ran today? The ones that showed you don't have cancer? I switched those samples too." Dr. Hendricks' voice exploded through the phone. "That's impossible. I drew the blood myself." "From Nancy, yes. But I intercepted the samples before they reached the lab." "Nancy." Dr. Mitchell's voice cracked. "You do have cancer. Stage 3 cervical cancer, exactly as originally diagnosed. The samples showing you're healthy belong to another patient." The restaurant seemed to spin around Nancy. She gripped Marcus's arm for support, feeling her knees buckle. "But why would you lie about lying?" "Because," Keisha said softly, her mask of concern sliding back into place, "I needed you to have hope long enough to divorce Marcus and give me custody of the babies. Once that was done, I was going to tell you the truth and help you through treatment. We were going to fight it together." "You're monsters," Marcus breathed. "We're people who love Nancy enough to save her from you," David replied. "Even if it means she has to hate us for a while." Nancy felt the babies moving frantically inside her, responding to her elevated heart rate and stress hormones. "The stress," she whispered. "All this stress while I'm sick. What is this doing to my babies?" Dr. Hendricks' voice was tight with worry. "Nancy, you need to get to a hospital immediately. The combination of advanced pregnancy, cancer, and extreme psychological stress is incredibly dangerous. You could go into premature labor at any moment." "She's not going anywhere," David said firmly. "Not until Marcus signs over his shares in Alfred Tech and agrees to our terms." "What terms?" Marcus demanded. "Full custody of the children to Keisha. A quiet divorce with Nancy receiving half of everything. And you disappearing from her life forever." David's smile was cold. Consider it a business transaction. Your company and your wife, or we release the fabricated embezzlement evidence and Nancy never gets the cancer treatment she needs. Nancy found her voice, and when she spoke, it carried a strength that surprised everyone in the room. No. Nancy, Keisha started. I said no. Nancy stood straighter, her hands protective over her belly. I won't be used as a pawn in your revenge fantasy anymore. And I won't let my children be born into a world built on lies and manipulation. She turned to Marcus, her eyes meeting his for the first time with real honesty since the DNA results had been revealed. Marcus, I've made terrible mistakes. I've hurt you in ways I can't take back. But these people, these plans, this isn't love. It's obsession and revenge wrapped in good intentions. Marcus looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw something he'd missed for months. Beneath the exhaustion and fear, Nancy Alford was still the strongest woman he'd ever known. The woman who'd worked 3 jobs while putting herself through law school. The woman who'd believed in his dreams when Alfred Tech was just an idea sketched on napkins. What do you need? He asked simply. I need to know, Nancy said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Are you staying because you feel guilty, or because you want to fight for us? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around them, police officers, criminals, and restaurant patrons waited for his answer. Marcus thought about 7 years of marriage, about work emails answered during anniversary dinners and business calls taken during romantic weekends. He thought about the distance that had grown between them, the intimacy they'd lost, the family they dreamed of but never prioritized. But he also thought about Nancy sitting alone in hospital beds, about her desperate attempts to connect with him, about the affairs that had been orchestrated but built on real loneliness and real need. I'm staying because I love you, he said finally. I'm staying because I failed you once, and I won't fail you again. I'm staying because those babies, regardless of their DNA, are going to need parents who choose each other every single day. Nancy felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of despair. Keisha's face twisted with rage. You're making a mistake, Nancy. He'll abandon you the moment the cameras stop rolling. The moment his company is safe. Maybe, Nancy admitted. But that's my choice to make. And right now, I choose to fight. For my marriage, for my health, for my children's future. She looked directly at David and Keisha, her voice gaining power. And I choose to fight against people who would manipulate and destroy innocent lives for their own selfish purposes. Detective Rivera moved forward. That's enough. David Kim, Keisha Williams, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, you're all under arrest. But as the handcuffs came out, David smiled. You think this ends here? Nancy, you have 6 months to live. Maybe less with the stress we've put you through tonight. Marcus will be broke and disgraced by morning. And those babies. His smile turned vicious. Well, premature babies don't always survive, do they? Nancy gasped, clutching her stomach as a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. The stress, the revelations, the confrontation, it was all too much. Marcus, she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Something's wrong. When everything you believe is stripped away, what's left to fight for? How do you choose hope when the people closest to you have betrayed everything you trusted? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes our greatest strength comes from our darkest moments. Nancy doubled over as another wave of pain shot through her abdomen. Marcus caught her before she could fall, his arms wrapping protectively around her swollen form. We need an ambulance," Marcus shouted. Detective Rivera was already on her radio when Nancy's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID made everyone freeze. Dr. Patricia Webb, Stanford Genetics Lab. "Answer it," Detective Rivera commanded. "Speakerphone." Nancy's hands shook as she accepted the call. Dr. Webb. "Mrs. Alford, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours. There's been a development in your case, something that changes everything." Dr. Webb's voice was tight with urgency. "But first, are you somewhere safe? The people who broke into my lab tonight, they're still out there, and they're dangerous." "We have suspects in custody," Detective Rivera interjected. "This is Detective Rivera, SFPD. What can you tell us about the break-in?" "Detective, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but I've triple-checked everything." Dr. Webb took a shaky breath. "The DNA samples that were tested, they weren't tampered with by the people you have in custody. The break-in tonight was someone trying to cover up something much bigger." Marcus felt Nancy's grip tighten on his arm. "What do you mean?" "Mrs. Alford, those DNA samples you submitted for paternity testing? They were never your baby's DNA at all." The restaurant went dead silent. Even David and Keisha, halfway to the police cars, stopped struggling against their restraints. "That's impossible," Nancy whispered. "The samples came from my amniocentesis. I watched Dr. Peterson draw them myself." "Yes, but Dr. Peterson never sent them to our lab. Someone intercepted them and substituted different samples. Samples from 3 different men who aren't connected to any of this situation." Dr. Webb's voice was grim. "Mrs. Alford, we ran emergency tests tonight on the samples that were actually taken from your amniocentesis. The samples Dr. Peterson had stored separately as backup." Nancy's heart hammered against her ribs. "And your babies share DNA with both you and your husband, Marcus Alford. All 3 of them. There's no question about paternity." The words hit like lightning. Nancy and Marcus stared at each other in shock while around them, chaos erupted. David was screaming denials. Keisha was demanding to know how that was possible, and Detective Rivera was barking orders into her radio. "But wait," Marcus said, his mind racing. "If Keisha and David orchestrated everything else, why wouldn't they tamper with the DNA results too? Why use random samples instead of making sure the babies appeared to be from Nancy's affairs?" Dr. Webb's silence was telling. Finally, she spoke, "Because they didn't orchestrate the DNA fraud, Mr. Alford. Someone else did. Someone who wanted to make absolutely sure those babies appeared to have no biological connection to either of you." Nancy felt her world tilting. Who would want that? "Someone who planned to take custody of the children," Dr. Webb said grimly. "Someone who needed them to appear orphaned, legally speaking, so they could claim guardianship." Detective Rivera stepped forward. "Dr. Webb, who had access to intercept those samples." "That's the terrifying part, Detective. It had to be someone with access to multiple medical facilities, someone with connections in genetic testing labs, someone with the resources to orchestrate this level of fraud across multiple institutions." Dr. Webb paused. "This isn't the work of a bitter friend or a vengeful business partner. This is organized, professional, and extremely well-funded." Nancy's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The display made her blood run cold. "Mom. Nancy, sweetheart, are you all right?" Victoria Alford's cultured voice filled the restaurant. "I just saw the most disturbing news reports about you and Marcus." Marcus's face went white. His mother had never called Nancy directly. All communication went through him or his assistant. "Mom, how did you get Nancy's direct number?" "Oh, darling, I've had Nancy's number for years. We've been in much closer contact than you realize." Victoria's laugh was light, musical, and somehow chilling. "Nancy, dear, you sound distressed. Are you somewhere safe?" Nancy looked at Marcus with growing horror. "Mrs. Alford, yes, we're at a restaurant with police." "Wonderful. I'm actually nearby. I'll be right there." The line went dead. Nancy and Marcus stared at each other, puzzle pieces finally clicking into a picture too horrifying to contemplate. "Your mother," Nancy whispered. "Marcus, when did your mother start taking such a personal interest in my medical appointments?" Marcus's face was ashen. "She offered to help coordinate your fertility treatments. Said she wanted to make sure you had the best doctors, the most cutting-edge procedures." "She recommended Dr. Peterson," Nancy realized. "She insisted I use him instead of my regular gynecologist. She said he was the best in the field for high-risk pregnancies." Detective Rivera was already on her radio again. "I need a background check on Victoria Alford immediately. And someone needs to locate Dr. Peterson, now." Dr. Webb's voice crackled through the phone. "There's more. The break-in tonight wasn't random vandalism. Someone was trying to destroy evidence of the DNA substitution. But they missed something: security footage showing who originally delivered the fake samples to our lab." "Who?" Marcus demanded. "A woman in her 60s, well-dressed, driving a luxury sedan registered to Alford Holdings." Nancy felt the babies kick frantically, responding to her skyrocketing blood pressure. Another sharp pain shot through her abdomen, stronger this time. "The stress is triggering early labor," she gasped. "Marcus, I can feel it starting." But before Marcus could respond, the restaurant's main entrance opened with a flourish. Victoria Alford swept in like she was arriving at a charity gala instead of a crime scene. At 65, she was still strikingly beautiful, the kind of woman who commanded attention and respect wherever she went. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her designer dress immaculate despite the late hour. "Nancy, darling." Victoria rushed toward them, her arms outstretched. "You look absolutely terrible. All this stress can't be good for the babies." Detective Rivera stepped between Victoria and Nancy. "Ma'am, I need you to stop right there." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in surprise. "I beg your pardon? I'm Victoria Alford. This is my daughter-in-law, and she's clearly in distress." "Mrs. Alford, we have some questions about your involvement in recent events concerning your son's family." Victoria's laugh was tinkling, innocent. "My involvement? Detective, I'm afraid there's been some misunderstanding. I've been trying to help Nancy through a very difficult time. The poor dear has been so confused lately, the cancer diagnosis, the stress of pregnancy, discovering those awful DNA test results." "Mom," Marcus said slowly, "how did you know about the DNA results?" "We haven't told anyone." Victoria's smile never wavered. "Darling, you know how quickly news travels in our circle. People talk." "The results came back less than 4 hours ago," Nancy said, her voice getting stronger despite the pain. "From a private lab. The only people who knew were Marcus, me, Keisha, David, and the lab technicians." Victoria's composure cracked for just a moment, a flash of something cold and calculating before the concerned mother-in-law mask slipped back into place. "Nancy, you're being paranoid. The stress is making you imagine conspiracies that don't exist." Dr. Webb's voice cut through the tension. "Mrs. Victoria Alford, this is Dr. Patricia Webb from Stanford Genetics Lab. You were recorded on our security cameras 3 days ago, delivering samples to our facility and paying cash for expedited processing. Would you like to explain why you had DNA samples that weren't from your daughter-in-law's babies?" The silence stretched like a taut wire. Victoria looked around the restaurant, at the police officers, at her son's shocked face, at Nancy's protective stance over her belly. Finally, she smiled. But this smile was nothing like the warm maternal expression she'd worn for years. This smile was sharp, predatory, victorious. "You want to know why?" Victoria's voice lost its cultured sweetness, becoming hard and businesslike. "Because those children are the future of the Alford legacy, and I'll be damned if they're raised by a woman who thinks she can manipulate my son with fake pregnancies and manufactured crises." Nancy gasped. "Fake pregnancies?" "Oh, the pregnancy is real enough," Victoria continued, her mask completely gone now. "But did you really think I'd let you trap Marcus with babies that might not even be his? Did you think I'd let some opportunistic lawyer's daughter become the mother of Alford heirs?" Marcus stepped protectively in front of Nancy. "Mom, what have you done?" "I've protected our family," Victoria said simply. "When Nancy started having those sordid affairs, yes, I knew about all of them, I was having her followed. I realized she was going to destroy everything we've built. So I made sure that if there were children, there would be legal grounds to remove them from her custody. By making it look like they weren't Marcus's children," Detective Rivera said, understanding flooding her voice. "Precisely. Nancy would be declared an unfit mother, a cancer patient who had multiple affairs and tried to pass off another man's children as her husband's. I would be granted emergency custody as the children's grandmother. Marcus would divorce Nancy, marry someone more suitable, and the Alford name would remain untarnished." Nancy felt another contraction, stronger this time. But through the physical pain, a terrible realization was dawning. The cancer diagnosis. "You manipulated that too, didn't you?" Victoria's smile was almost proud. "Dr. Peterson has been on my payroll for 2 years. I needed Nancy desperate, vulnerable, focused on her limited time instead of fighting for custody. A dying woman doesn't have the strength to battle for her children." "You made me think I was dying," Nancy whispered, "so I'd give up my babies to save them from being orphaned." "I made you face reality, dear. You were never going to be a good mother, too emotional, too weak, too dependent on others to solve your problems. My grandchildren deserve better." Marcus looked at the woman who'd raised him as if seeing her for the first time. "You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my company. You tortured my wife and put our children at risk. For what?" "For legacy." Victoria snapped. "For the future of everything your father and I built. Marcus, you're brilliant with technology, but you're naive about people. Nancy would have bled us dry with her neediness and her affairs. This way, she's out of the picture, the children have proper guardianship, and you can start over with someone who understands what it means to be an Alford." Nancy doubled over as the strongest contraction yet ripped through her body. "Marcus," she gasped, "the babies are coming. Now." But Victoria wasn't finished. As sirens wailed in the distance, ambulances responding to Detective Rivera's call, she pulled out her phone. "I'm afraid this doesn't end here," she said calmly. "You see, I've been preparing for this possibility. Nancy's medical records show a history of drug use, fabricated, of course, but documented by Dr. Peterson. When Child Protective Services arrives, they'll find a cancer patient with a history of substance abuse who's been under extreme psychological stress. The babies will be placed in protective custody immediately. Nancy felt her world fracturing. Even as her body prepared to bring new life into the world, Victoria Alford was orchestrating one final devastating blow. And the best part, Victoria continued with chilling satisfaction, is that Dr. Peterson has been documenting Nancy's erratic behavior and delusional thinking for months. If she tries to fight the custody ruling, we have grounds for a psychiatric hold. Either way, those children will be raised as proper Alfords. As Nancy's labor intensified and sirens grew closer, she realized that everything, every betrayal, every manipulation, every moment of despair, had been orchestrated by the one person who was supposed to welcome her into the family. The woman who'd smiled at her wedding, who'd hosted baby showers, who'd called her daughter for 7 years had been systematically destroying her life from the beginning. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was working against you all along? How do you fight back when the person destroying your life holds all the power? Tell us your thoughts below. Sometimes the people closest to us are the most dangerous enemies. The ambulance arrived just as Nancy's water broke, soaking the restaurant's marble floor. Emergency medical technicians rushed in with a gurney, but Victoria positioned herself directly in their path. "I'm Victoria Alford, the baby's grandmother," she announced with authority. "I have medical power of attorney for Nancy due to her compromised mental state." "That's not true," Marcus shouted, but Victoria produced a legal document from her purse. The lead EMT glanced at the papers. "Ma'am, this appears to be in order. Are you the emergency contact?" "I am now." Victoria's smile was triumphant. "Nancy's been under severe psychological distress, and I've been appointed as her healthcare proxy by the family court." Detective Rivera tried to intervene. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for fraud and—" "Detective, until charges are formally filed, I'm a concerned grandmother trying to save my daughter-in-law's life and protect my grandchildren." Victoria's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd spent decades navigating legal systems. "Nancy, darling, let's get you to the hospital. Dr. Peterson is waiting to deliver the babies." Nancy's eyes went wide with terror. No. Not Dr. Peterson. Anyone but him. But another contraction hit, so powerful it left her gasping. Marcus held her hand as they transferred her to the gurney. "She wants a different doctor," Marcus told the EMTs. "Sir, Dr. Peterson has been managing Mrs. Alford's high-risk pregnancy for months," the lead EMT replied. "At this stage of labor, changing doctors could be dangerous for both mother and babies." Victoria climbed into the ambulance beside Nancy. "Don't worry, dear. Everything's going to be fine. Dr. Peterson has prepared for every contingency." As the ambulance doors closed, Nancy caught Marcus's eye through the window. In that look, she saw her husband's helplessness, his rage and his fear, but also his determination to fight. Yet as they pulled away, Victoria leaned close to Nancy's ear. "Did you know that complications during triplet births are incredibly common?" Victoria whispered, her voice almost gentle. "Hemorrhaging, oxygen deprivation, emergency cesareans that go wrong. Sometimes mothers don't survive. Sometimes babies don't make it either." Nancy's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't." "I wouldn't have to do anything," Victoria replied. adjusting Nancy's foreline with practiced ease. High-stress triplet delivery to a woman with advanced cancer and a history of drug use? Anything could happen. Dr. Peterson will do everything he can, of course, but sometimes medicine has its limitations. The realization hit Nancy like a physical blow. Victoria wasn't just planning to take the babies. She was planning to eliminate Nancy entirely. A tragic death during childbirth would leave Marcus free to remarry someone Victoria approved of, and the children would be raised exclusively by their grandmother. At the hospital, chaos erupted. Dr. Peterson was indeed waiting, his smile warm and reassuring despite the late hour. But Nancy now saw something else in his expression, the same cold calculation she'd witnessed in Victoria. "Nancy, how are we feeling?" Dr. Peterson asked, checking her chart. "The contractions are coming quite rapidly. We're going to need to move fast." "I want a different doctor," Nancy said firmly, even as pain racked her body. "I'm afraid that's not possible at this stage," Dr. Peterson replied smoothly. "I'm the only physician here qualified to handle high-risk triplet deliveries with your specific complications." Nancy looked around desperately for Marcus, but Victoria had somehow managed to have him detained in the waiting area while they prepared Nancy for delivery. "Where's my husband?" "He'll join us once we have you stabilized," Victoria said, still playing the concerned mother-in-law. "Right now, let's focus on bringing those babies safely into the world." As they wheeled Nancy into the delivery room, she heard Victoria speaking quietly to Dr. Peterson. "Remember, Nancy's cancer is quite advanced. The stress of delivery could cause complications we can't predict. Do whatever you think is best for the children." Through the fog of medication and pain, Nancy realized Victoria was giving Dr. Peterson permission to let her die if it meant saving the babies Victoria would then raise as her own. Meanwhile, in the waiting area, Marcus paced like a caged animal. Detective Rivera sat beside him, her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to coordinate with multiple agencies. "The problem is jurisdiction," she explained to Marcus. "The medical power of attorney your mother produced is legitimate, filed 3 days ago when Nancy was declared mentally unstable due to the fake cancer diagnosis and supposed affair revelations. But it's all fabricated. We know that, but the courts don't. Not yet. Until we can prove fraud, Victoria has legal authority over Nancy's medical decisions." Marcus felt his world collapsing. "So she can just let Nancy die?" "Not legally. But if complications arise during delivery." Detective Rivera didn't finish the sentence. Marcus's phone rang. David Kim, calling from the back of a police car. "Marcus, you need to listen to me." David's voice was urgent. "Keisha and I were idiots, but we didn't know about Victoria. She played us, used our anger to create chaos while she implemented her real plan." "What real plan?" "The medical records, the DNA fraud, the power of attorney, it's all connected to something bigger. Marcus, your mother has been setting this up for 2 years. Ever since Nancy's first miscarriage." Marcus's heart stopped. "What miscarriage?" The silence on the line was deafening. Finally, David spoke. "Nancy never told you?" "Marcus, Nancy's been pregnant twice before. Both times, she miscarried in the first trimester. Both times, Victoria convinced her not to tell you because you were under so much stress with company expansions." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. "Mom sabotaged those pregnancies too." "I think so. And I think she's been dosing Nancy with something to cause the miscarriages. Nancy always got sick after family dinners at your mother's house. remember? Always attributed it to stress, but... Marcus felt bile rise in his throat. She's been trying to prevent Nancy from having children this whole time. Until she realized she could use the pregnancy to destroy Nancy entirely. Marcus, you have to stop this. Dr. Peterson isn't just on her payroll. He's been helping her for years. Every doctor's appointment, every test result, every medication Nancy's been given has been filtered through your mother. The phone line crackled as David's call was terminated. Someone had discovered he was using his one phone call to warn Marcus instead of calling a lawyer. Marcus turned to Detective Rivera with desperate eyes. Can you get me into that delivery room? Not legally. Not while Victoria has medical power of attorney. Then illegally. Detective Rivera studied Marcus's face. I didn't hear that. As Marcus prepared to storm the delivery wing, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. Over the intercom, a panicked voice announced, Code Blue, Labor and Delivery Room 3. Code Blue, Labor and Delivery Room 3. Nancy was dying. Marcus ran through hospital corridors, pushing past nurses and orderlies, his heart hammering against his ribs. Behind him, Detective Rivera followed, her badge clearing their path. They burst into the delivery room to find controlled chaos. Nancy lay unconscious on the table, machines beeping frantically around her. Dr. Peterson worked with seeming urgency, but Marcus noticed his movements seemed almost deliberately slow. What happened? Marcus demanded. Nancy's blood pressure spiked dramatically, Dr. Peterson replied without looking up. We're experiencing complications with the delivery. I may need to make some difficult decisions to save the babies. Victoria stood in the corner, her face a mask of concern. Marcus, darling, Dr. Peterson is doing everything he can. Sometimes these high-risk pregnancies just, well, sometimes we have to choose. Choose what? Between Nancy and the babies, Victoria said softly. Dr. Peterson says we may not be able to save them all. Marcus looked at the monitors surrounding Nancy. Her blood pressure was indeed dangerously high, but something about the scene felt wrong. The 4 lines seemed to have more bags attached than necessary. Dr. Peterson's hands moved with practiced precision, but his urgency felt performative. What medications is she on? Marcus asked. Standard delivery medications, Dr. Peterson replied quickly. Nothing unusual. But Marcus had spent 7 years married to a woman who'd struggled with fertility. He'd attended enough medical appointments to recognize most of the standard drugs. The 4 bags didn't match what he remembered from their previous attempts. Detective Rivera, Marcus said quietly, I think they're poisoning her. Nancy's vital signs continued to deteriorate. The baby's heart monitors showed distress. Victoria moved closer to Marcus, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Marcus, I know this is difficult, but you need to prepare yourself. Nancy's cancer is more advanced than we thought. The stress of carrying triplets while battling terminal illness. Dr. Peterson says it may have been too much for her system. She doesn't have cancer. Marcus shouted. Darling, denial is natural, but... Nancy's eyes suddenly fluttered open. Despite her weakened state, her gaze found Marcus immediately. Her lips moved, forming words no one else could hear. Marcus leaned close to her face. What is it, baby? 4, Nancy whispered, barely audible. Wrong medication. Marcus looked up at Dr. Peterson, who was now watching them nervously. What exactly is in that for? I told you, standard. I want to see the medication labels. Now. Dr. Peterson hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, Detective Rivera moved forward and began reading the 4 bags. Her face went pale. This isn't standard delivery medication, she announced. This is... Jesus Christ, this is ergot alkaloid. This can cause hemorrhaging, blood pressure spikes, and fetal distress. Victoria's mask finally slipped completely. Detective, you have no medical training. You can't possibly understand the complexities of... I understand attempted murder, Detective Rivera shot back, immediately calling for backup and medical staff. But the damage was already done. Nancy's condition continued to deteriorate, and the babies showed increasing signs of distress. As real medical professionals rushed into the room to take over Nancy's care, Victoria smiled one last time. Even if you save her now, she said calmly, the legal battle will destroy her. Child Protective Services is already here, waiting to take custody of the babies the moment they're born. Nancy will be declared an unfit mother, Marcus will lose his company, and I will raise those children properly. As if summoned by her words, CPS workers appeared in the hallway outside the delivery room, armed with emergency custody orders and police escorts. Nancy lay unconscious again, fighting for her life and the lives of her children, while everything she'd ever loved hung in the balance. Marcus stood beside her hospital bed, holding her hand, feeling utterly powerless as the woman who'd raised him orchestrated the complete destruction of his family. For the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus wondered if love and determination would be enough. Victoria had spent 2 years planning this moment, had manipulated every system, corrupted every safeguard, and eliminated every escape route. As Nancy's monitors flatlined briefly before her heart found its rhythm again, Marcus realized they were about to lose everything that mattered, and the woman responsible was going to walk away victorious. When the people meant to protect us become our greatest threat, when every system fails, when love seems powerless against calculated evil, what's left? How do you fight an enemy who's spent years planning your destruction? Drop your thoughts below. Sometimes our darkest hour reveals what we're truly made of. As Nancy's heart monitor stabilized, real medical staff flooded the room, pushing Dr. Peterson aside. The lead physician, Dr. Amanda Chun, quickly assessed Nancy's condition with sharp, professional eyes. Who authorized ergot alkaloid for a triplet delivery? Dr. Chun demanded, checking Nancy's chart. This could have killed her and the babies. Dr. Peterson stepped forward, his confidence wavering. I was following standard protocol for high risk. There is no protocol that includes ergot during active labor, Dr. Chun cut him off. This is medical malpractice at minimum, attempted murder at worst. She turned to the nurses. Get me fresh 4 lines, stat. And someone call hospital security. I want Dr. Peterson removed from this room immediately. Victoria's composure finally cracked. You can't do that. I have medical power of attorney, and I specifically requested Dr. Peterson handle this delivery. Dr. Chun looked at Victoria with barely contained contempt. Ma'am, your power of attorney doesn't extend to choosing medications that could kill the patient. I'm taking over Mrs. Alford's care immediately. As hospital security escorted a protesting Dr. Peterson from the room, Nancy's eyes opened again. This time, they were clearer, more focused. The ergot was leaving her system, and her natural strength was returning. Marcus, she whispered, her voice stronger than before. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Nancy struggled to sit up slightly, her hands moving protectively to her belly. "The babies, are they okay?" Dr. Chun monitored the fetal heartbeats. "They're showing signs of distress, but they're fighters. Just like their mom, apparently." She looked directly at Nancy. "Mrs. Alford, I need you to know, whatever's been going on here, I'm not part of it. My job is to save you and your children. That's it." For the first time in hours, Nancy felt a spark of hope. But Victoria wasn't finished. "Dr. Chun, you're interfering with a complex family situation. Nancy is mentally unstable, has a history of drug use, and—" "Ma'am, I've reviewed Mrs. Alford's actual medical records, her real ones, not whatever fabricated documents you've been circulating." Dr. Chen's voice was ice-cold. "This woman doesn't have cancer, doesn't have a history of drug use, and shows no signs of mental instability. What she does have is evidence of systematic poisoning over several months." Nancy and Marcus stared at Dr. Chun in shock. "How do you know about the fabricated records?" Dr. Chun pulled out her phone, showing them a video call screen. On it was a familiar face that made Victoria go pale. "Hello, Nancy." "Hello, Marcus." Dr. James Hendricks appeared on the screen, but he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a woman Nancy recognized as Dr. Patricia Webb from the genetics lab, and another man she'd never seen before. "Dr. Hendricks," Nancy breathed. "How did you—" "Nancy, meet FBI Special Agent Robert Martinez," Dr. Hendricks said. "For the past 6 months, he's been investigating a network of medical professionals involved in fraud, falsified diagnoses, and illegal custody schemes. Your case isn't the first." Agent Martinez leaned into the camera. "Mrs. Alford, we've been building a case against Victoria Alford, Dr. Peterson, and several other individuals for running what essentially amounts to a baby trafficking operation disguised as medical intervention." Victoria's face went white. "That's absurd. I would never." "Mrs. Victoria Alford," Agent Martinez continued, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, medical fraud, attempted murder, and violation of federal kidnapping statutes. The Child Protective Services orders you obtained are null and void. They were based on falsified medical records and fabricated evidence." Detective Rivera stepped forward with handcuffs, but Victoria backed toward the window. "You don't understand," Victoria said desperately. "I was protecting the family legacy. Nancy was going to destroy everything we built. The affairs, the instability, the neediness." "The affairs you helped orchestrate," Nancy said, finding her voice and her strength. "The instability you created with fake cancer diagnoses and systematic poisoning. The neediness you fostered by isolating me from my husband." Victoria's laugh was sharp, bitter. "You think Marcus would have stayed with you without my intervention? You think he would have chosen you over his company if you hadn't gotten pregnant?" Nancy looked at Marcus, and for a moment, doubt flickered in her eyes. But Marcus stepped forward, taking her hand firmly. "Nancy, for 7 years, I let my mother convince me that success meant sacrifice. That providing meant never being present. That love was something you earned through achievement rather than something you chose every day." His voice grew stronger. "I lost sight of what mattered, and that created the distance between us. But you didn't trap me with this pregnancy, you saved me with it." "Marcus," Victoria started. "No, Mom. You don't get to speak anymore." Marcus turned to face the woman who'd raised him. "You tried to kill my wife. You tried to steal my children. You destroyed my company's reputation and corrupted medical professionals. You turned my marriage into a battlefield and my home into a prison." Nancy felt the babies moving inside her, responding to the shift in her emotional state. For the first time in months, it felt like hope instead of stress. "But here's what you didn't count on," Marcus continued, pulling out his own phone. "While you were playing puppet master with everyone else's lives, I was learning to fight for what actually matters." He showed the room a recording app that had been running throughout Victoria's confession. "Every word you said in this room has been recorded and transmitted to FBI servers. Every admission of guilt, every detail of your plan, every threat you made against my family." Agent Martinez nodded approvingly. "Mrs. Victoria Alford, you have the right to remain silent." As Detective Rivera cuffed Victoria, the older woman looked at Nancy with something that might have been genuine emotion for the first time. "You'll never be able to give them what I could have," Victoria said quietly. "The connections, the opportunities, the social standing." "I'll give them something better," Nancy replied, her hand moving to her belly where her children grew. "I'll give them parents who choose love over legacy, who choose presence over perfection, who choose each other every single day." Victoria was led away, still protesting, still insisting she'd done everything for the family. Dr. Chun checked Nancy's vital signs again. "The ergot is almost completely out of your system, and the babies are responding well. We're going to monitor you closely, but I think we can proceed with a natural delivery if you're up for it." Nancy looked at Marcus, seeing her husband clearly for the first time in months, not as the distant businessman who'd chosen success over family, but as the man who'd just fought the most powerful person in his life to protect their future together. "Are you ready to meet our children?" she asked. Marcus kissed her forehead, tears streaming down his face. "I've been ready for 7 years. I just didn't know how to show it." As if responding to their parents' newfound unity, the first baby decided it was time to make an appearance. Nancy felt a powerful contraction, but this time, it felt like progress instead of pain. "Okay, Nancy," Dr. Chin said, positioning herself for delivery. "Let's bring these babies into a world where they're wanted, loved, and protected by parents who will never let anyone hurt them." Through the hospital window, dawn was breaking over the city. After the longest, darkest night of their lives, Nancy and Marcus were about to welcome their children into the light. But as Nancy began to push, she realized their fight wasn't over. Victoria might be in custody, but the damage she'd done to their marriage, their trust, and their future would take time to heal. The question was whether love could rebuild what manipulation had torn apart. When you've been betrayed by the people closest to you, how do you learn to trust again? How do you rebuild a foundation that's been shattered by lies? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes the real victory is choosing to believe in love again. 3 hours later, Nancy held their first daughter in her arms while Marcus cradled their son, and Dr. Chun prepared to deliver their second daughter. The delivery room, which had been a place of terror and manipulation just hours before, had transformed into something sacred, a space where new life entered the world surrounded by authentic love. "She's perfect," Nancy whispered, studying their first daughter's tiny features. "Look at her hands, Marcus. Look at those perfect little fingers." Marcus was crying openly, his successful businessman facade completely gone. "I can't believe how small she is. How perfect they all are." "One more push, Nancy," Dr. Chen encouraged. "Your second daughter is ready to meet the world." As Nancy delivered their final baby, Agent Martinez appeared in the doorway with news that would change everything. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said quietly, "but there's something you both need to know immediately." Nancy and Marcus looked up from their newborns with concern. Victoria's arrest triggered a series of raids, Agent Martinez continued. We discovered that her operation was much larger than we initially thought. She wasn't just targeting your family. She'd been running a systematic scheme to manipulate wealthy families' medical records, create custody disputes, and gain control of inheritance-eligible children. Marcus felt cold dread wash over him. How many families? 17 over the past 5 years. All high-net-worth individuals with complex family dynamics. Victoria would identify vulnerable marriages, exploit existing problems, create medical emergencies or custody issues, then position herself or her associates as guardians or trustees. Agent Martinez's expression was grim. Mrs. Alford, your case was actually her most ambitious. She stood to control not just 3 children, but Marcus's entire business empire through you. Nancy looked down at their daughters, then at Marcus. She was planning to control Alford Tech through the children? More than that. We found documents showing she intended to have Marcus declared mentally unfit to run the company due to the family crisis and his poor judgment in marriage. With you deceased or institutionalized and the children in her custody, she would have been appointed trustee of their inheritance, which includes Marcus's controlling shares in Alford Tech. The full scope of Victoria's plan hit them like a physical blow. She hadn't just wanted to hurt Nancy or control the grandchildren. She'd orchestrated a complete corporate takeover disguised as family concern. Marcus's phone rang. His assistant, Jennifer, calling at 6 a.m. Marcus, thank God you're answering. The board called an emergency meeting for this morning. They're planning to vote you out as CEO based on the embezzlement allegations and the personal scandal. But something strange is happening. What do you mean? 3 board members called me privately. They're saying they received anonymous packages overnight, documents showing that the embezzlement evidence was fabricated, along with recordings of Victoria admitting to framing you. Marcus looked at Agent Martinez with surprise. Did you? Part of our investigation included monitoring all communications related to the conspiracy. When we realized Victoria was trying to destroy your company as well as your family, we made sure the truth reached the right people. Agent Martinez smiled. The FBI takes corporate espionage very seriously, Mr. Alford. Nancy's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nancy, this is David Kim. I'm still in custody, but my lawyer wanted you to know, Keisha and I are prepared to testify against Victoria and Dr. Peterson. We were idiots, but we won't let her get away with what she tried to do to you and your family. I'm sorry for everything. D. Marcus read the message over Nancy's shoulder. Can we trust him? I think his guilt is real, Nancy said quietly. David and Keisha were manipulated too, just in a different way. Victoria used their feelings, David's love for me and Keisha's possessiveness, to create chaos while she implemented her real plan. Dr. Chun finished Nancy's post-delivery care and stepped back to admire the family scene. 3 healthy babies, 2 parents who fought hell and high water to protect them, and a love story that survived systematic sabotage. I've delivered a lot of babies, but this one's special. As if on cue, Marcus's phone rang again. This time, it was the board chairman. Marcus, I owe you an apology. We've reviewed the evidence that came to light overnight, and it's clear you've been the victim of an elaborate frame-up. The board is prepared to not only reinstate you but to offer our full support in prosecuting whoever did this to you and your family. Marcus looked at Nancy, who was nursing one of their daughters while the other 2 slept peacefully in their bassinets. Thank you, Robert. But I need to be honest with you. My priorities have changed. Alfred Tech is important, but it's not the most important thing in my life anymore. Marcus, you don't have to. I do. I let my company consume my life for years. I let my marriage suffer because I thought providing was more important than being present. If I come back as CEO, things are going to be different. Family dinners are sacred. Weekends are off limits unless it's a genuine emergency. And my wife and children come first, always. There was a pause, then Robert's laughter. Marcus, considering what you've been through in the past 24 hours, I think the board would approve you taking a month off to adjust to being a father of triplets. We'll manage. After Marcus hung up, Nancy reached for his hand. Are you sure about changing how you approach work? Your company is your legacy. Marcus looked at their 3 children, then at his wife. Nancy, I spent years building a company that was supposed to secure our future. But what's the point of securing the future if you're not present for the present? These babies, this family, you're my real legacy. Agent Martinez cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Victoria's financial records show she's been systematically embezzling from Alfred Tech for 2 years, approximately $15 million. She was funding her entire operation with money stolen from your company, Marcus. Can we recover it? Most of it. And here's the interesting part. She kept meticulous records, apparently planning to frame someone else for the theft eventually. Those same records now provide evidence of every crime she committed, every person she corrupted, every family she targeted. Nancy shifted one of the babies to her shoulder, patting the tiny back gently. What happens to Dr. Peterson and the others? Dr. Peterson's medical license has been suspended pending investigation. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Keisha's cousin, is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. The hospital is conducting a full review of their security protocols. Agent Martinez's expression grew serious. Mrs. Alford, I want you to know, Victoria's scheme was sophisticated enough that if you hadn't fought back when you did, she probably would have succeeded. What made the difference? Marcus asked. Agent Martinez smiled. Love. Pure and simple. Every family Victoria targeted before had fundamental problems. Genuine mistrust, real financial disagreements, actual incompatibility. But underneath all the manipulation and lies, you two never stopped loving each other. When the crisis hit, instead of turning on each other, you turned toward each other. Nancy felt tears in her eyes as she looked at Marcus holding their son. We almost didn't, though. There were moments tonight when I thought it was over. But it wasn't, Marcus said firmly. Even when I thought you'd betrayed me, even when I was angry and hurt and humiliated, I couldn't stop loving you. And when I realized you were in danger, nothing else mattered. Dr. Chun returned with birth certificates and hospital paperwork. Have you chosen names for these little ones? Nancy and Marcus looked at each other, realizing they'd been so focused on surviving the crisis that they hadn't finalized names. We talked about it months ago, Nancy said, but that feels like a lifetime ago now. Hope, Marcus said suddenly. I want to name our first daughter Hope, because she represents everything we almost lost and everything we fought to save. Nancy smiled, looking down at the baby in her arms. Hope Alford. I love it. And our son? Dr. Chen asked. Marcus James Alford Jr., Nancy said without hesitation. After his father, who learned that real strength means fighting for your family. And your second daughter? Nancy thought for a moment, then looked at Marcus with a smile that held both mischief and deep love. Victoria Nancy Alford. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Nancy, after everything my mother did. Not after your mother, Nancy corrected. After victory. Victoria means victory, Marcus. This little girl represents our victory over every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to destroy our family. And her middle name honors the fact that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is fight for love. As Dr. Chun filled out the birth certificates, Agent Martinez prepared to leave. We'll need formal statements from both of you once you're ready, but for now, enjoy your family. Justice will be served, but it can wait a few days. Just as he reached the door, Agent Martinez turned back. Oh, and Mrs. Alford? The real DNA results from your amniocentesis. Dr. Webb wanted me to tell you that all three babies not only share DNA with both parents, but they're actually genetically remarkable. Triplets with that level of genetic diversity from two parents is incredibly rare. You're looking at three completely unique individuals who are going to change the world. After everyone left, Nancy and Marcus sat in the quiet hospital room with their children, watching the sunrise paint everything in golden light. The terror of the past 24 hours seemed like a nightmare that had finally ended. Marcus, Nancy said quietly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. Can you forgive me? The affairs, the lies, the times I gave up instead of fighting for us. Can you really forgive me? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying their son's peaceful face. Nancy, I can forgive you because I understand now what I couldn't see then. You weren't trying to hurt me, you were trying to find your way back to me. You were drowning, and I was so focused on work that I didn't throw you a lifeline. But I still made the choice to have those affairs. And I made the choice to prioritize everything else over our marriage. We both made mistakes, Nancy. But we also both fought like hell to save this family when it mattered most. He looked at her directly. Can you forgive me for being absent? For letting you feel so alone that you sought comfort elsewhere? Nancy felt a weight she'd been carrying for months finally lift from her shoulders. Yes. I forgive you, Marcus. And more than that, I choose you. Not because of obligation or guilt or these beautiful babies, but because I love the man you've become through this crisis. Even knowing that I might slip back into old patterns, that building a company will always be part of who I am. Even knowing that being independent and sometimes stubborn will always be part of who I am, Nancy replied. The difference is, now we know what we're fighting for. And we know we're stronger together than apart. Marcus leaned over and kissed Nancy gently, careful not to disturb the baby she was holding. 7 years ago, I married you because you made me want to be better. Today, I'm choosing to stay married to you because you made me actually become better. As their babies slept peacefully in their parents' arms, Nancy and Marcus began planning their real future together. One built on truth instead of manipulation, presence instead of absence, and love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than before. The nightmare orchestrated by Victoria Alford was over, but the love story of Nancy and Marcus was just beginning its next chapter. Have you ever experienced a crisis that showed you who you really are and what truly matters? Sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest gifts. Tell us below, what would you fight for if everything was on the line? 6 months later, Nancy stood in the nursery of their newly renovated home, watching Marcus read bedtime stories to Hope, Marcus Jr., and Victoria. The babies were thriving, 3 distinct personalities already emerging at 6 months old. Hope was contemplative and observant. Marcus Jr. was adventurous and determined, and Victoria was pure joy, always laughing and reaching for everything around her. And so the brave princess and her knight decided that the greatest treasure wasn't gold or castles, Marcus read softly, but the love they chose to build together every single day. Nancy smiled at his improvised ending to what had been a traditional fairy tale. In the months since Victoria Alford's arrest and trial, Marcus had become a different kind of storyteller, one who emphasized partnership over rescue, choice over obligation, and presence over perfection. The legal proceedings had been swift and decisive. Victoria was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for conspiracy, medical fraud, attempted murder, and corporate espionage. Dr. Peterson lost his medical license and received 10 years for his role in the scheme. The 17 other families Victoria had targeted were finally getting justice, and several had reached out to Nancy and Marcus to share their own stories of survival and healing. David Kim and Keisha Williams had both received reduced sentences in exchange for their testimony. David was serving 2 years for corporate fraud but would be eligible for parole in 18 months. Keisha faced 3 years for conspiracy and practicing law under false pretenses. She'd been forging legal documents for Victoria's operation. Surprisingly, both had written heartfelt letters of apology to Nancy and Marcus. David's letter, in particular, had moved Nancy to tears. "I confused love with possession, passion with ownership. Real love wants the other person to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include you. I'm sorry it took me so long to learn that lesson, and I'm sorry Nancy paid the price for my selfishness." "Penny, for your thoughts?" Marcus asked, having finished the story and settled their babies in their cribs. "Just thinking about how different everything is now," Nancy replied, leaning into his embrace as they watched their children sleep. "6 months ago, I thought I was dying. I thought our marriage was over. I thought we'd lost everything that mattered. And now—" Nancy turned in his arms, looking at the man who'd fought heaven and earth to save their family. Marcus had kept his promises about prioritizing their marriage. Alford Tech now had a co-CEO structure, with Marcus focusing on innovation and strategy while his partner handled day-to-day operations. Family dinner was sacred, weekends were protected, and Nancy never wondered where she stood in her husband's priorities anymore. "Now I know what it feels like to be truly chosen," Nancy said. "Not because of circumstances or obligation, but because someone looked at all of me, my flaws, my mistakes, my fears, and decided I was worth fighting for." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Speaking of fighting for things." He pulled a small wrapped box from his pocket. "I have something for you." Nancy laughed. "Marcus, it's not our anniversary or my birthday or—" "It's the anniversary of the night everything changed," Marcus said. "6 months ago tonight, our world fell apart. But it also showed us who we really are when everything else is stripped away." Nancy unwrapped the box to find a simple platinum band set with 3 small diamonds. "Marcus, it's beautiful, but I already have a wedding ring." "This isn't a wedding ring," Marcus said, taking the band and slipping it onto Nancy's right hand. "This is a choosing ring. 1 diamond for each of our children, and a promise that I will choose you and choose us every single day for the rest of our lives." Nancy felt tears in her eyes. "You don't need to prove anything to me anymore, Marcus. I know you love us." "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to celebrate something." Marcus's smile was soft, genuine. "Nancy, I fell in love with you twice. Once 7 years ago when we were young and everything seemed possible, and again 6 months ago when we were broken and everything seemed lost. But I want to keep falling in love with you, through every season, every challenge, every joy that's coming." As if summoned by their parents' emotional moment, baby Victoria started fussing in her crib. Nancy moved to comfort her, but Marcus caught her hand. "Let me," he said. "You've been up with them twice already tonight." Nancy watched her husband lift their daughter, automatically swaying in the gentle rhythm he'd learned calmed all three babies. The sight of Marcus, this powerful, brilliant businessman, singing a lullaby to their fussy daughter filled Nancy with a contentment she'd never imagined possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Alford, this is Dr. Amanda Chun. I have some news about your medical follow-up that I think you'll want to hear. Can you call me tomorrow? It's good news, I promise." Nancy showed Marcus the message. "What do you think it could be?" "With Dr. Chun, it could be anything. She's been monitoring your recovery from the ergot poisoning, right? Maybe your system has fully cleared it. Or maybe—" Nancy placed her hand on her stomach, a sudden realization dawning. "Marcus, when was my last period?" Marcus looked at her with wide eyes. "You don't think?" "I don't know. But with everything that's happened, with all the medical chaos, I haven't been tracking anything except making sure our babies are healthy and thriving." They stared at each other, the possibility hanging in the air between them. After everything they'd been through, the idea of another pregnancy felt both terrifying and miraculous. "If I am pregnant again," Nancy said slowly, "how would you feel about that?" Marcus looked around the nursery at their three sleeping children, then at his wife. This woman who'd survived attempted murder, systematic manipulation, and the near destruction of everything she held dear, yet still stood ready to embrace whatever came next. "6 months ago, I would have panicked," Marcus admitted. "I would have worried about the company, about managing more children, about whether we could handle it." He moved closer to Nancy, baby Victoria now sleeping peacefully against his shoulder. Now I think any child would be lucky to be part of this family." Nancy felt that familiar flutter in her stomach, one she now recognized might not be nervousness, but something far more wonderful. "Whatever Dr. Chen's news is," Nancy said, "we'll face it together. Good news, challenging news, surprising news, we're a team now." "We always were a team," Marcus corrected gently. "We just forgot how to play on the same side for a while." As they stood in their children's nursery, surrounded by the quiet sounds of peaceful sleep and deep contentment, Nancy realized their story had come full circle. The restaurant confrontation that had nearly destroyed them had instead revealed the unshakable foundation of their love. The manipulations designed to tear them apart had instead taught them how to choose each other consciously and deliberately. Marcus's phone buzzed with an email notification. He glanced at it and smiled. "What is it?" "Alfred Tech just got invited to pitch a revolutionary childcare technology to a consortium of family-focused companies. The project would combine my tech expertise with real-world parenting experience." Marcus's grin was infectious. "Apparently, having triplets while running a company makes you exactly the kind of CEO they're looking for." Nancy laughed. "So your new priority on family is actually going to help your career? Funny how that works, isn't it? When you stop trying to balance work and life and instead try to integrate them meaningfully, everything starts working better." Baby Marcus Jr. stirred in his crib, making the soft cooing sounds that meant he was dreaming. Nancy moved to adjust his blanket, and as she did, she felt that flutter again, stronger this time. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I think we're about to need a bigger nursery." He looked at her knowingly. "Are you sure?" No, Nancy admitted. But I'm sure that whatever comes next, we'll handle it together. And I'm sure that these babies, she gestured to their 3 sleeping children, are going to have the most amazing little brother or sister. Marcus set Victoria back in her crib and wrapped his arms around Nancy from behind, both of them looking out the nursery window at the city lights twinkling below. You know, Marcus said, when I proposed to you 7 years ago, I thought I was promising you a life of security and success. What do you think you're promising me now? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering. Adventure. Growth. The kind of love that gets stronger when it's tested. A partnership that can survive anything because it's built on choosing each other consciously, not just falling for each other accidentally. Nancy leaned back against her husband's chest, feeling their children sleeping peacefully behind them and possibly feeling new life beginning inside her. I think I like that promise better. As they turned off the nursery lights and headed to their own bedroom, Nancy's phone buzzed one more time. This message was from Jennifer, Marcus's assistant. Nancy, I know it's late, but I couldn't wait until tomorrow. 3 major parenting magazines want to interview you and Marcus about building stronger marriages through crisis. And Good Morning America wants to do a segment on families who've overcome systematic manipulation. Are you interested? Nancy showed Marcus the message. What do you think? Are we ready to tell our story publicly? Only if we tell it together, Marcus said. And only if we can help other families who might be facing similar challenges. Nancy smiled, thinking about the 17 other families Victoria had targeted, about David and Keisha learning hard lessons about love versus obsession, about the medical professionals who'd been corrupted and were now seeking redemption. I think we have a responsibility to tell our story, Nancy said. Not for fame or sympathy, but because someone out there might be living through their own version of what we survived. Someone might need to know that love can win, that families can heal, that it's never too late to choose each other. As they settled into bed together, really together, with no distance, no secrets, no manipulation between them, Marcus pulled Nancy close. Ready for whatever tomorrow brings? He asked. Nancy felt the ring on her right hand, symbol of daily choice rather than one-time commitment. She thought about Dr. Chen's mysterious good news, about the possibility of another pregnancy, about the interviews and opportunities ahead of them, about the continued healing their marriage would require. Most of all, she thought about the 3 perfect children sleeping in the next room and the man beside her who'd proven that real love fights for what matters most. Bring it on, Nancy whispered, and meant it with her whole heart. Outside their window, the city hummed with the quiet energy of people living their lives, facing their challenges, making their choices. And in the Alford house, a family slept peacefully, knowing that whatever storms might come, they had learned to weather them together. The greatest love stories, Nancy realized as sleep took her, weren't about perfect people finding each other. They were about imperfect people choosing each other, again and again, until the choice became as natural as breathing. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If this touched your heart, then you're going to love the next one. It's just as powerful, and even more intriguing than you can imagine. So don't stop here. Click the video showing on your screen right now and continue the journey. I'll be waiting for you on the other side of that story. See you there.